Okay. The person in charge of the storeroom is gone. What we can do maybe is to email you the content. Yeah, you can give us your email and then we will send it to you.
I would like to do that.
I will email it to you soon as I.
Okay.
This is network. Water if one of you anytime needed please Should we give a few more minutes or before we start? Maybe 5 more minutes.
need it actually today. Since today is the lecture about Quran actually, so we might use the help of the translation of the meaning of the Quran just to help everyone. In the name of Allah, in the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Hatem Mohamed. I'm Egyptian. Work here and live for about 7 years in Hong Kong. Married and have 2 children. I work for Serving Islam Team in Hong Kong. It's a Dawah organization. Dawah means an invitation for Islam. We preach Islam for the locals and whoever is interested to know about Islam. I'm graduate. I have a bachelor in Spanish language and literature, but I've spent a lot of the previous 5 years of my station here in Hong Kong teaching the language and as well as giving lectures about Islam. So today, inshallah, we should be, God willing, we should be talking about the Quran. And as we Muslims believe, it is the final and last message coming from God to mankind. Before we start, just about talk about Quran, I'd like to give a brief about the books and the revelations that came before the Quran and why we consider Quran actually as the final revelation. To study the Quran, or as any other scripture, holy scripture revealed by God to mankind through messengers, we need to have in mind 2 things. The first of all, when we read the book, we need to understand the content of the book, which means here, in the case of the Quran, for example, using the translation, the English translation or any translation of the Quran is not totally accurate to understand the content of the Quran. But we use it just to make it easy for the people to understand. But as a preference, we advise that people also go and study the book in its original language. Because in its original language, in Arabic, the Quran was revealed. The Quran came from God through the archangel, the angel Gabriel, to the Prophet Muhammad in Arabic. So as we all know, translation, or in the process of translation from any language to other language, some of the meaning might be lost or dropped. So in order to understand the book like the Holy Quran, we need first to understand the content exactly. And this is for the purpose that, for this purpose, one must understand and study the Quran deeply and in details. And as I said, we prefer that in Arabic would be better, but now we can use the English as well. The second thing, we need to have a special knowledge of the circumstances that surround the message, which is also necessary for fuller understanding. These 2 things, we'll go quickly through them. First one is to understand the content of the Quran deeply, and I mentioned the Arabic language because I have an example from the Quran, chapter 112 in the Quran, which is the description of God. When God talks about Himself, He says, "Qul huwa Allahu ahad," means say He, Allah, the one and only, the one and only. In Arabic, we use the term ahad. We have two terms. We have the term ahad and the term wahid. Both of them mean one. But there is a difference in between these 2 words. God uses this word to talk about Himself, to describe Himself or His unity. One, or ahad, means one, but it is the indivisible one. Indivisible means that He is solid, He is not compound, He is not composed. Okay? So there is no other factors joining together, making the mixture of God. So that's why Allah uses ahad. While wahid, which means also one, can be anything but it's also composed. Like when I can say the door is one door, but the door here consists of wood and metal and screws. Okay, so that's why when I mentioned, I said you have to study in Arabic, number one. You have your best, study your best. I mean, make your best to study in Arabic, so you will understand the message better. Okay, so that's when we say ahad. We didn't say wahid. No say wahid. Okay. The second thing is the special understanding or special knowledge of the circumstances of the revelation. I give an example for that. When the Prophet's wife, the youngest wife, Aisha, was accused of committing the sin of adultery. You can find that in the Quran, chapter 25, verse 8. God talks about this incident, but He didn't mention names. He just mentioned the incident briefly. So anyone who reads the book, who reads even the translation of the book, just from the apparently he will not understand many things. He will not understand what was, he has to understand, in order to understand this verse, he has to understand the circumstances. What happened? And that is not in the Quran, in the text. It is in the tafsir, or is in the tradition or the saying of the Prophet. So you have to use other methods in order to understand the Quran, what the Quran says. You have to go through the circumstances that is about the message revealed in order to fully understand the message. Okay? So these two things are so important in the understanding of any holy book, not only the Quran. We believe that God have communicated with man since the sentence of man to earth. And that is in the Quran, actually mentioned, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when God say to Adam and Eve and Satan as well, He says, we said, go down from it, all of you, and when guidance come to you from me, whoever follows my guidance, there will be no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. Okay? So, since the descendant of Adam, God have gave the promise that He will communicate to Adam, to guide mankind. But why should God guide mankind? Because at the same time with Adam and Eve coming down to earth, it's also Satan coming down. The first incident of evil to happen was when Satan disobeyed the God command to bow before Adam. And since then, Satan took on himself, on his shoulder, to mislead and misguide Adam and his offspring. For that reason, God have promised Adam, have promised his descendant to guide, to send the message through messengers in order to show them the right way. The order or the promise was not only for Adam and Eve, it was for the whole son of Adam. As also revealed in the Quran, God says in the Quran, chapter 7, verse 35, all children of Adam, if there come to you messengers from among you relating to you my verses or my signs, then whoever fears Allah, whoever fears God, and reforms, there will be no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. So that's also a promise coming to the son of Adam. So how the message or how the guidance come to the mankind? God uses people, chosen people from between mankind in order to carry this message to their fellow people. So these messengers also, for the support of that, God have said in the Quran, we sent before you, before time, our apostle with clear signs and sent down with them the book, the message, the scripture. And the balance, the criteria. Balance here, with this, in this book, there are do's and don'ts. There are guidance. And that's the balance, the criteria. To say which is right and which is wrong. The limits of God. Okay? Of right and wrong. Then that men may stand forth in justice. Because as we are as men, we don't know what's right and what's wrong. To tell you what, what's right and what's wrong. A man like me or a woman like you cannot tell. We cannot tell each other what's right and what's wrong because the concept of right and wrong differs from place and time and people. It depends who's talking. So who, according to that who's speaking, then he defines by himself the right and wrong. So in order to receive guidance, in order to receive criteria of wrong and right and wrong, it has to come from someone, it has to come from an entity, a superior power, that's out of the box. And who is that? The one who have created us. The one who have manufactured us. The manufacturer is the one who set the manual for the problem, for example. He's the one who says how to use this tool or machine and what you shouldn't do in order for this creation or for this machine or for this tool to last longer. Okay? Not to drop it away. So God chooses people to send to them His message, and these messengers are people like us, carrying the message to us. Names of the messengers, we can, in the Quran, we can see the Quran have mentioned few of the names, about 25 names. In the verse here, or in the ayah, we call it ayah in Arabic, God mentions some names of the Prophet, as He says, "Verily we have revealed to you, O Muhammad, as we have revealed to Noah." And the prophets after. We also inspired Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 sons of Jacob. Jesus, Job, Jonah, Aaron, and Solomon. And to David, we gave the Psalms. And messenger we have mentioned to you before, and messengers we have not mentioned to you. And to Moses, Allah spoke directly. So in this verse, in this ayah, we have few names of the prophets that God have chosen to carry the message to His people. Messengers, they, as I said, some of them have been mentioned, as God mentioned the names in the previous verse, and some of them we don't have much about them. What we have is just some incidents in the Quran revealing some circumstances and some situations that happened before the Prophet Muhammad, but without mentioning a name. So God, in this case, He will use, "Oh, haven't you heard about what happened to our slaves?" So, and He will not mention the name. And the reason behind that, God did not mention all the names because in these cases, the name were not that important. The incident that God was relating is that was important. It was irrelevant, the name. Only the incident was relevant. That's why God mentioned some and did not mention the names of others. And the message of these prophets, all of them, all messengers, carried only one message. Basic message, which is that to worship only God, serve Allah, and shun false gods. So that was the basic message of all the messengers. Only to worship God, serve God, Allah in Arabic. That's the proper name of God. And shun all and refuse and reject all false deities. That's the basic message. These messages came with the prophets or with the messengers, had names. And the Quran gave us some of these names. As in the verse in here, the Quran mentions the sheets of Abraham, the Torah of Moses, Psalms of David, the Gospel of Jesus, and the Quran of Muhammad. All that is mentioned inside the Quran by names. There were also some scriptures that have not been mentioned inside. In the Quran itself, there are some references from the other books that came before it. And the Quran mentions, gives the account, gives the name of the source when he mentioned that verse or so. These, like for example, the Quran have some references from the Psalms, have references from the Gospel, have references from the Torah. But these references, according to the belief of our belief, is that these references have been mentioned in the Quran, not because the Quran is copying them, it's because these verses or these incidents or these references were meant to last. It has a value, an important value to last for the people. Okay? We believe, come here. So all the teachings contained in the former scriptures that were meant to be of lasting value and importance are included in the Quran. The Quran also gives some specific accounts, although selective, of what the pre-Quranic scriptures contain, and it's worthwhile to look briefly at these materials. For example, here we have a reference from the Torah, what we call it the Mosaic Law. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals, and he says, it was we who revealed the law to Moses. And here we mention, here's the accounts mentioned, this verse or this quotation is coming from the Torah. The Ra'in was guidance and light. We ordained the Ra'in for them, life for life, eye for eye, nose for nose, ear for ear, tooth for tooth, and one's equal for it. That is exactly mentioned in the Torah. And that's what the Quran took from the Torah, and is mentioned the name of it, that is, it had been taken from the Torah. Okay? Because this principle was predestined to last, to continue. With the development of people, of mankind, there were some revelations that were situation-oriented, or only for the time, for a specific time, for specific people. And there were some instructions meant to last, to continue with them. Okay. Another reference we have here from the Psalms, God says, and verily we have written in the Psalms after the reminder referring to the Torah as well, my righteous slaves will inherit the earth. This also we can find in the Psalms. We have also references from the Injil or the Gospel. You can find it in the Quran, chapter 48, verse 29. The pre-Quranic scriptures, like the Torah, like the Psalms and the Gospels, besides carrying the same basic message about Allah and His creation, although also brought specific instruction addressed directly to particular communities of people at given points of time in history and in particular circumstances. Revelations before the Quran, and hence scripture before it, were in many of their details situation-oriented in nature, and therefore confined to their particular frameworks. This also explains the continuity of revelation, because of these revelation were situation-oriented. So as long as we are still developing, and mankind is still developing, there's still a need for more revelation, for more guidance. With changing circumstances and in different situations, new guidance from Allah was required. As long as the revelation and scripture were not completely universal in nature, revelation would never reach finality. The final revelation would be, say, the Quran. Muhammad was the last messenger from Allah to mankind, and he brought the final revelation from God to man. Therefore, scripture containing the revelation is the last of the Holy Scripture. The Quran, or the Holy Quran, carried the same basic message of the previous revelations. Serve God, serve Allah alone, and shun all false dictators. That's the basic revelation. The directives and instructions of the Quran by which it provides guidance to man are universal nature. They apply for all times to come and all situations. This revelation corresponds to man's position on earth and in history. Man now has reached in his development a stage when universal principles need to be applied to safeguard his purposeful existence. We come to the Quran. The Quran is an Arabic word. It comes from the Arabic root, qara'a, in Arabic. comes from a three radical root called qaf, ra, a, which means to read or to recite. To read or to recite. But Quran is a verbal noun, which means recitation or reading. Quran has been mentioned or has mentioning by name in itself in the Quran, inside it. So the Quran calling itself Quran, which we cannot find in many of the other scriptures. The Quran, by definition, is the speech of Allah, speech of God, sent down about the last prophet Muhammad through the angel Gabriel in its precise meaning and precise wording. Precise meaning and precise wording here exactly as God revealed it, with no alteration, no changes. Transmitted to us by numerous persons, both verbally and in writing. Numerous persons, those were the companions of the Prophet who listened to the Quran from the Prophet and they memorized it by heart, and also in a later stage it was written, compiled in one. And there were not only one companion, it were many companions, and it was a tradition for the companions to encourage each other and compete actually with each other to memorize the Quran. The Quran also have many names, have other names like Furqan, which means criterion, because it has came down to set limits between right and wrong. Tanzil, which means sent down. Obviously, it has been coming from outside of there, from God to us. Dhikr, reminder, to remind us of our purpose on this life, and to remind us of God. And Kitab, scripture, because it was written. The Quran also have many other names referred inside the Quran, and these names are Nur, light, Huda, guidance, Rahmah, mercy, glorious, blessed, announcer, and warner. All these are names of the Quran. And as you see, all these names reflect one of the various aspects of the revealed, of the revelation of God. The division of the text, and actually I want to skip that, but I will go quickly through that. The Quran was written in Arabic language. It has 114 chapters, 6,236 verses. The chapters, the longest is Al-Baqarah, 286 verses, and the shortest is three verses only. And the arrangement of the Quran, we will go with that and later after, when we talk about the compilation, about the collection. The first, or the shortest division of the Quran, we call it ayah. The shortest division of the Quran, we call it ayah. It's like a sentence. Shortest division of the Quran. Ayah. An ayah in its meaning, in English translation, means a sign or guide. And since the Quran has been revealed by God to guide us, so it's not surprising at all to have the name, this verse, the sentence to have the name ayah, which means sign. We do not encourage people to use the word verse, because Quran is not poetry, for example. So we, as Arab or as Muslim, we use the word ayah, which is better to describe the name, or describe this short sentence revealed by ayah, means sign or guiding. The accumulation of ayat, the plural of ayah is ayat, the accumulation of that ayat is called surah. Accumulation is called surah. Surah means chapter. And as we said, the Quran has 114 chapters. They vary in length. All the surahs starts with the statement, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, except one only chapter, chapter number 9. And the verse itself, it's not, the sentence itself is not part of the Quran. But it was the tradition of the Prophet and his companions, of all the Muslims, to mention the name of God before starting any act, before doing anything. So you mention the name of God, so might that action be blessed. by mentioning the name of God once. All the 114 surahs of the Quran have a name which serves as a sort of heading or for purpose of identification. And the names are chosen for example, like the most important word or distinguishing word inside the verse or inside the surah will be chosen as a name of the surah, or sometimes it is one of the very first words in the surah, so we will be taking also as a name of the surah. So it is not part of the Quran, but it was used to identify these chapters. So the chapter Al-Baqarah, for example, which is talking about what we call Al-Baqarah. The chapter so just for purpose of identification. There have also some chapters called the chapter of the sons of Israel. Although it is not the name, but we used to that because the whole chapter is talking about the sons of Israel. So it became as for identifying this chapter. Means of the revelations, how the revelation used to come to the Prophet. Actually, we have to talk first about revelation. What's the meaning of revelation and how God used to reveal to all His messengers, or what are the ways of God to reveal to His messengers. And that's still stated in the Quran in verse 42, verse 51, chapter 42. It says, "It's not fitting for a man that God should speak to him except by inspiration, or from behind a veil, or by sending of a messenger to reveal with God's permission what God will." So we have three kind of revelations, or three means of revelations. It's either by inspiration, and we can see that in the story of Abraham, when he received a vision to slaughter his son. It's even mentioned in the Bible. You can see that in the Quran in chapter 37, verse 102. Speech hidden away, and that is here in chapter 27, verse 8, which is related to when God spoke to Moses from the fire. He did not reveal himself to Moses, but he was speaking to him directly. Or revelation through words or speech, and that's carried by a special messenger from God. And that's the case of the Prophet Muhammad. Stages of the descendant of the Quran. The Quran have been descended into through two stages. The first stage is that from the preserved tablet at God's presence, where all the holy scriptures are written there. That's the preserved tablet. So the Quran was taken and descended down from the preserved tablet to the lowest heaven of the world. It was descended completely one time. And then from that heaven, from that place, it started to be revealed to the Prophet throughout 23 years.